Hello, everyone. You're watching Burnout Triumphants, episode 14. A little shout out to Digiburn. Digiburn is a digital tool supporting young and experienced professionals to track their mental well being, improve their lifestyle, and achieve the desired work life balance. You can get Digiburn now on Google Play and the Apple App Store. And Leigh is my guest today. She's an award winning higher education leader dedicated to transforming the next generation of academic leadership. She has 15 plus years of experience and she specializes in leadership and career development. She helps professionals grow as leaders and get careers that are actually meaningful, purpose driven, and pay well. So, Haley, how are you?
Good. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you on. Can't wait to get into it. So, tell me a bit about yourself.
Sure. Yeah. I have worked in higher education for most of my career, and I specialize in working with new and mid career professionals to help them transition into careers, just as you mentioned, that are purposeful, meaningful, and that really pay well and pay what people are worth.
Yeah. Well, how did you get into that in the first place? How did that happen?
Sure, yes. Well, I had transitioned out of my long tenured higher education career after 15 years and decided to go to work in corporate for a high growth startup. And this was just around the time that the pandemic hit. And so all of that high growth was temporarily stalled. We had to lay off half of the workforce in the company and unfortunately continue working and growing the company when we were really short staffed. So for about a year and a half, the staff that had remained worked really hard, lots of hours, long weeks, and it really took a toll on me personally and professionally. And after a health scare that I had, decided to leave that job without a plan and took some time off just to get healthy, to feel better. And during that time, I was looking for something to do, and I really wanted to help others who were experiencing a pivot point in their career, who wanted to change or who really weren't happy doing what they were doing. And so I started using the skills I developed in my career as a manager and a leader and put that into my own career coaching business. So I've been doing that for a while now. I have clients all around the world, and I really enjoy helping others to make the best of their careers.
Wow. Yeah, well, everyone, if you feel like Lee could help you, her links are in the description so you can connect. Let's get into the meat of the matter. How did your burnout start? Was it like back then, in that situation that you're telling me right now?
Yeah. Well, like many maybe type A people who are
Yeah.
really hard workers and high achievers, I didn't really notice the burnout starting to happen until the physical effects really started to wear on me. It was always a balance that I was trying to achieve with my family and my work life. The pandemic really put a lot of stress on that. I had kids at home, small kids, and I was trying to work remotely. And once I got back to the office and the kids were back to school, that high growth mode continued, and I found myself really struggling to separate work with home life. I did the best that I could, but then I started to have some physical effects of all of the work.
Yeah.
I wasn't sleeping well. I wasn't eating well. I was not a very happy person because I was just in this chronic stress mode. But I really didn't notice it until I actually ended up in the hospital. I was having some unexplained medical problems, and they did every test in the book. So I had, CAT scans and PET scans and MRIs to try to figure out, and ultrasounds, what was going on. And it wasn't till I asked them to check my stress,
Also,
the
you thought of that.
cortisol levels.
Wow.
I did, because as the tests were coming back and they were saying nothing's wrong, nothing's wrong, I was like, something is wrong. My
Yeah.
body felt like it was shutting down on me. And sure enough, that cortisol level test was through the roof. And I had been experiencing elevated chronic stress. And so at that point, my doctor had a really frank conversation with me and said, "You will either end up having a heart attack or a stroke if you continue doing what you're doing, or you can quit your job." So it was a frightening prospect, but I valued my life over my job, obviously, and decided right then and there that I had to quit my job. It wasn't
Yeah.
something that I had forecasted or prepped for or thought about, but I knew I needed to finally take care of myself.
Yeah. Wow. Well, let's go back to the start of your burnout. Um it was in the midst of like everything going down in the world. So, you know, let's
Yeah.
get more into your environment. Like, I imagine you were at home, like working and living in the same space. Do you feel like was that a thing?
Yeah. Well, I at first I thought, "Oh, this is gonna be fun. I don't have to commute in the morning and necessarily do as much prep as normal."
Sure, so did all of us.
But but, the work and the culture doesn't really change no matter where you are. I mean, that is always going to stay with you. And so, the stress that we were under, the work that we were putting in, it didn't change whether we were home or in the office. And then I had the added challenge, perhaps, of having two young school age kids who also had to be taught at home during the day while I was trying to work. And trying to find that balance was near impossible at the beginning. It was nice that I had the opportunity to have them at home, but managing the two, I think, really put added stress um, on me because there wasn't a separation between work, school, parenting, home. It was just all a blur for several months.
Yeah, sounds like it was working you, mother you, and never really you, which uh,
Yeah, very true. Yep, you need
yeah,
that time to separate from those things, and when you don't have it, you just don't get that release, and part of the challenge was that everything was shut down. I couldn't go to the gym, I couldn't go to the library, uh, the things that I had enjoyed doing, which were kind of my escape or um, my opportunity for me just weren't there anymore, and I think a lot of people really struggled with that at the beginning.
yeah. Mm, I think, yeah, most of us did, but for some people it's more stressful because of their environment. Like, for example, you, I don't have kids.
Yeah.
I'm just taking care of myself. It's 1,000 times
Yeah,
easier.
funny story. So I knew I was really in trouble when one day I was working in the basement, my kids were upstairs, and we have a dog, and the dog came down into my office, and it's a black and white dog with, black and white spots. My youngest, who was in preschool at the time, had taken a pink marker and colored all the white spots pink. So my dog was pink and black. And then I said, "Wow, I think I need to pay a little closer attention to what's going on in my house." That was a good
Yeah,
illustration of what can go wrong.
exactly. Exactly. Well, in your opinion, do you think, like, there's something, let's say, specific to your area of work that could lead to burnout? Because we've had people,
Mm,
in
yeah.
marketing tell us about things that are like more specific to marketing that could make someone burn out. So, do you think that there are things in your area of work like that?
Yeah, I think there's two things. First, being a startup and being a high growth startup, there's lots of demands
Yeah.
to continue that growth and see how far it will go. And as part of being a startup, you're not as well established as a Nike or an Amazon or someone who's been around for a while with a lot of processes and procedures. So it was a bit trial by error. We were always changing things, always adjusting things, changing course on the fly. And so just the nature of being in a young company and growing that company lends itself sometimes to being in a more stressful environment. I'd also say that the position I held, which was a managing position, also uh, contained its own stress, because you're not only having to look after yourself, but you're looking after a
Sure.
team. And, there's about 20 individuals before layoffs and about half that after that I was working with. And, you know, I'm I'm someone who has a lot of empathy for people. And so it was important for me to be able to connect and to support the people that I was working with. But then that also meant that they were bringing up their problems, their challenges, and I was trying to help them resolve some of those issues. So when you've got your own stress plus added stress from the people that you
Yeah.
were working with as well, it just kind of um, doubles the situation that you're in. So I think those two things in particular was part of the reason why I did burn out in the end.
Yeah. Well, I like to ask if there was a low point, but I mean, I think your low point was in hospital, maybe. I mean, I think you told me that in.
Yeah, yeah. I wish I probably would have. In hindsight's always 2020, they say, but I wish I would have noticed it sooner before that. Nobody wants to end up in the hospital, and really frustrating not knowing what is wrong. In the end, it was a fairly simple situation that could have been avoided had I planned more in advance. But again, when you're in a leadership role and you're a high achiever type position, it's really hard to step away, and not continue doing what you're doing. You want to fight through, you want to succeed, you want it to be successful. And I had left a really great 15-year career for this opportunity. So I wanted it to go well and I wanted it to succeed. And I think that was part of the reason I stayed so long and got to the point where that I got to in the end.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, after the results coming in for cortisol and, after the hospital, what happened after? Like, how did you start
Mm.
recovering?
Yeah, so being the type of person, an empathetic person, I really wanted to try to leave on a good note. So I actually gave a really extended notice to my employer. I worked for 2 more months, but fortunately, my boss recognized that I was transitioning out of the role and shifted some of the responsibilities so that I could focus on doing what I needed to do to transition over
Hmm.
some of the work that I was doing. So I kind of spent 2 months ramping down. And then I took several months off and I didn't do a whole lot at first. I enjoyed the downtime. It hit right around the time when school was out for the summer. So I spent a little more time with my kids. They were busy in activities, so I got to be a little bit flexible and really just did the things that I enjoyed. I started reading books again. I started exercising again. All the things that I had enjoyed doing that I put to the side because I simply just didn't have the mental capacity or the physical capacity to do those things at the time that I was working. And spent a few months just enjoying life again. And I, through the support of my family, I was able to take that time without worrying about working or finances. But then it became apparent that I would have to get back to doing something. So that's when I got into the career coaching business. It was really important to me that if somebody else was in a similar situation that I was, that they had someone they could talk to help them move through the process. And once I got myself into that career coaching space, I was just shocked by how many people, even people that I thought had it all together, had great jobs, how many people reached out to me and said, I'm struggling. I'm struggling with the same things that you are. And it really made me realize that there's a need to help people with these situations.
Wow. Well, do you have any let's say top practices for burnout recovery?
Yeah. Um, One thing that I tell people and that I wish I would have known before I was in my situation is that you should try to do your best to be prepared for needing to take a break in your career, whether that's financially, whether it's with your family, or how your kind of life is organized. The more prepared you are, the easy that transition is going to be. And it's okay to take a break. It really is. A lot of people said what I did was brave. And I said, really, it was out of necessity more than anything. I just had to do it to be able to move forward. One thing that I think is really important, and I see people making this mistake perhaps, is jumping back into an opportunity too soon. And it is really stressful to leave a job because of burnout or whatever situation you have. But it's important that you really understand the reasons why you got there in the first place, identify those reasons, and make absolutely certain that your next opportunity is an opportunity that will allow you to be successful and not get into that situation. Of course, we can't predict 1 year, 5 years down the road, but I made a list of some of the non-negotiables for me. I only
Yeah.
applied for opportunities that would fill that need, and I negotiated my job offer with those non-negotiables so that I wouldn't get into a similar situation.
Nice. That's a good trick. Good.
Yeah, because a lot of people just think they're stressed out, they need a break, and they can just go back to work and just go back to a job. Um, but you could just be jumping back into the same situation just down the road. And so,
Yeah.
really think about what was it that got you to there in the first place, and how can you avoid that moving forward. It seems simple, but money can be a big motivator for people, and it's a necessity. I don't downplay the value of that. You have to be able to pay for things, certainly, but if you can do that in a way that doesn't jeopardize your health, that's really important.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you had the chance, what would you say to your past self? Like, would you even say something to your past self?
That's hard. Um, because you always wonder, what if I would have
Yeah.
stayed, what if I would have done things differently. I encourage people to try something, because the thing for me, was that I was looking for something different, and I maybe didn't quite know what it was until I had that burnout, and I could really say, all right, what was the disconnect? What wasn't working? And it's when you're not aligned with what your true self really wants, that's when you get into these stressful situations. So I craved flexibility with my family. I wanted to focus and do my work and be proud of the work that I was doing. And I was able then down the road to move into a career that really allows me to do those things. And even though I did have to sacrifice money, I did take a pay cut to do what I'm doing. Um, I'm much happier, and I have the career coaching business where I can help others, and that makes me really satisfied.
Amazing. I'm happy to hear that. Well, yeah, I mean, you obviously live differently now. But how is your life different now? Like, what do you do now to not
Yeah.
get in these types of situations? Because, even if you do something you love, I mean, there's still a chance to overdo it.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely. Yeah, I agree. And no, not every day is perfect, of course, but one of the pieces that I negotiated is a flexible work schedule or environment. I mean, most of my work has to be done during the day, but for example, this afternoon I'm attending my kids' school concert, and I made sure that nothing conflicted with that. And my teammates and my boss now that I work with also have similar priorities. And so we're all in agreement that those things are important, and they take precedent over work that could be done at another time.
Yeah.
And so I also am much better at recognizing when I'm starting to get overloaded, because I do work with a lot of clients. And so I have those hours too, and I try to balance those. And if I do start to experience some of that stress coming on, I simply prioritize what's important to me. I try to rearrange my work so that maybe I, schedule more meetings next week rather than doing them this week, and take time for myself. Getting to the gym is important to me, and I'm really trying to make that a priority in my daily life. And so I think that's the key for me, is now I can recognize the signs of stress a lot better and take care of them when they start to happen before it's too late.
Yeah, yeah. I I want to go back again. Did you notice creating any bad habits while in the midst of burning out and being really stressed? Like maybe
Mm,
oversleeping,
yeah.
maybe drinking too much coffee. Everyone has their own thing if they have one.
Yeah, gosh, all of those things. Not exercising, drinking too much coffee. I was never a coffee drinker until probably a couple of years ago. And I've been able to cut back on that a little bit. Not eating well, just, when you're
Yeah,
stressed and time is at a as a is as few as what I had, I wasn't making the best choices as well. So I think all of those things impacted my health in different ways in the end. You're not eating well, you're not sleeping well, um, a- and you're just trying to caffeinate yourself to stay awake and get work done. It's
yeah,
just not healthy for you. And so you need to be conscious about it, though. And I'm doing a better
sure.
job of that now.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I mean, have you worked on these? You just said you're doing better now, so
Yeah, yeah, coffee doesn't agree with me well, caffeine's not, so trying to cut back a little bit on that. It maybe a subconscious habit, and
yeah,
so, you start to get stressed, or you go, I go grab my Diet Coke because it's a mental piece. So being aware of it, and why are you doing it? Sleep is such a priority for me that I really try to be strict on that. I have an alarm on my phone that reminds me what I need to do to get my 8 hours of sleep, and just recreating that routine. I'm a big routine person, and when I was stressed out and in that situation, there was no routine. It was simply survival at that point. And so for me, having a routine is really important.
yeah, yeah. Interesting. Well,
Mhm.
has your after the whole thing, has your outlook on life changed?
Oh, yes, totally. It's interesting, and if there's any young people out here who are listening and just starting their careers, the traditional wisdom suggests you graduate high school, you go to college, you get a job, you work at a job for 40 something years, and then you retire. That's traditional wisdom, and that's not the only way to live and to work nowadays. Entering the entrepreneurial space was really exciting because I could set my own schedule. I could work as little or as much as I wanted to, and I could work from wherever. When I was taking my time off, I spent an extended period of time back in my home country, which is Canada. I'm now in the U.S. Uh, and I was working part time while I was there, and that was something I could never have done in my previous careers. And so I think just the effects of COVID and this flexible remote work has really kind of caught on with a lot of companies. I realized that sitting in my office cubicle 40, 60 hours a week just wasn't the only way that I could still be successful. And so changing the narrative around how we work and what success means. I
Yeah,
just want to be able to, live a decent life and my family's happy. And so as long as I can continue to do those things, that's what's important to me now, rather than all that focus I had on continuing to move up in my career. And it's fine if you're very motivated and you have goals that you want to achieve, but just don't let that overtake the enjoyment of living life, because You're going to be working for 40 years, so you want to be happy.
Amazing words. Amazing words. Well, uh, that was a really good. I was gonna ask you if you had anything to say to everyone watching, but I think you just did.
That's a good ending statement. Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's
make
really good.
people today have a lot of power in negotiating, and don't forget that you don't have to accept, and you shouldn't ever accept the first offer that comes to the table unless it's just your dream and it's perfect. But a lot of times there's a lot of wiggle room and negotiating room. And for me, I made sure that the things that were important to me were included in my offer, and they didn't necessarily have anything to do with the job in particular, but they had to do with my life. And
Yeah,
so that is also a negotiation point that you can use as well.
great. Well, the floor is yours to tell everyone anything you want to tell them. Like,
Mhm.
you know, anything you want
Yeah.
to say. Floor is yours. You could talk about yourself, about your
Oh goodness.
business, anything.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always open to connecting with new people. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, so that's a great place to connect with me. Don't be afraid to reach out. I love to chat with people. We can set up a time and just chat and talk about where you are in your career. I've had some really great mentors as well, and they've been able to guide me through some of the challenges that I've had, and I'm happy to be that for other people as well. And there's incredible opportunities nowadays to build your career to work with your life. And if you need any help with that or advice, I'd be happy to help you out. So that's what I'd like to share. Check me out on Facebook, LinkedIn. I have a YouTube channel as well. So appreciate your time.
Great. You heard it here, folks. Well, thank you really much for doing this. I really enjoyed talking to you and, hearing more about your experience. And everyone, make
Thank
sure
you.
to check out what Leigh does and keep an eye out for, Digiburn updates. So, yeah, thank you for watching. Thank you, Leigh, for coming here and doing the interview. I really enjoyed it. And yeah, well, subscribe and thanks for watching.